the passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
Have items to be considered for consent and the approval of the agenda tonight. Can I borrow your pen? You've got two already. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I noticed that Ms. Self is not here yet. Do we know if
She's gonna be a little late.
a few minutes late? Okay. Mr. Mayor and Board, some items for the consent agenda for your consideration. Roman numeral 10, Board Business, item A.
No, sir.
No?
No.
Okay. Alderman Perkins has requested we not put that on.
Yeah, I want to vote consistent with my last vote.
Okay.
He wants to be against it.
Roman numeral 11, Departmental Business, A, Airport, all 5 items with the notation that item number 5 is subject to some language modifications on behalf of the city from the city attorney. C, Office of the City Clerk, item 2. E, Fire Department, items 1 and 2. F, Personnel, item 2. G, Police Department, all 3 items. H, Public Services, items 1 and 2, both items.
Those particular items, do I hear that we have an approval of our official agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
under board business on item C, under board business,
Yes.
are we going to discuss that in open session or executive session?
What would be the consent of the Alderman?
Mr. Mayor, I prefer discussing this matter in open session. I don't see any need to discuss in executive session. I don't know what would be the statutory basis to discuss it. A matter of approval requests to amend the existing local bill for an additional 1% increase in hotel and motel taxes. I think that's a matter the public needs to hear discussion on, as to whatever that may be.
Do you have a reaction to that?
I think there are certain proprietary and business transactions that the developer would share with us in a private session that may be factually beneficial to our decision on that they're not going to share with us in open session, which could be taken up in executive session under various sections of the exceptions from the open meetings law. And of course, a vote and discussion on the actual legislation would take place in open session after we can hear those and ask various questions in executive session, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I would concur and then move that item 10C be moved to executive session.
That's in the form of a motion. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor of moving item C under Roman numeral 10, board business, to executive session, show by the sign of raising your hand, please. Move that to executive session.
Raise your hand.
Those opposed, putting that in executive session, raise your hands. 3. All right. It's been removed to executive session by a vote of 4 to 3. All right, well, did we get approval? We did not. All those in favor with those particular changes to the agenda, let me hear your vote on the motion, please. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. All right, approval of the minutes of the City of Starkville Board for the regular meeting of March the 4th.
I move approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 4th, 2008.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes from March the 4th, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Brings us down to the comment of the mayor of the Board of Aldermen. First of all, I'd like to, Everett, stand up. This is our new city engineer. We have some youth in this city hall, which is great. And we welcome you, not to Starkville because you're a native Starkvillian, but welcome you to the city as one of our newest employees of the city engineer.
Bill, do you want to stand up as an example of old blood or something?
Would also like to say that we are hosting the Mississippi State USBC Women's Bowling Association, the 48th annual tournament from April the 5th until May the 11th. It's a long time, it's about 6 weeks. Tell me where they're playing.
Here at the bowling alley.
Okay.
A lot of bowling.
Yeah, a lot of bowling for 6 weeks, so if you get a chance, y'all might catch that. Any of the aldermen got comments they'd like to make at this point? Brings us down to citizens' comments, and at this particular time in my program, you're allowed 3 minutes, and I will cut you off if you take any longer than that. Please state the ward that you're from, and when you come up, please, your name and your ward.
Good evening. My name is Alvin, Ward 7, to the Mayor and Board of Aldermen. The citizens of Puckhorn Acres, we would like to thank the police department and all of the emergency vehicles that came to our need 2 weeks ago today. And we're glad that no one else get hurt in that situation. Also, we want to thank the mayor for his humor. It helps us out a lot. And we have one question. We have been looking for our electric bill, and we hadn't received them. And some people, they pay their bills month by month.
We'll investigate that, Alvin. Anyone else would like to take your 3 minutes and address the board?
I'd be happy to give my electric bill.
Would PC's electric bill work, Alvin, if he gave it to you?
I don't know.
Okay, we'll move on. I don't see anyone getting up to come up to say anything. Public appearances tonight, we have a presentation by Stewart. Stewart, you made voice an opinion, I believe, the last time. Are you ready for your presentation?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm Stuart Davis. I'm a general contractor, build residential homes here in Starkville. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the board for seeing me this evening. I'm here tonight requesting authorization for a commercial burn in Greenbrier, Phase 11, Lot 327. If I can approach the table, I'm going to pass out this plat, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
You can see lot 327 is highlighted in orange. And that's the lot that I'm presenting tonight. I met with Mr. Mann earlier last week. And I've also got some pictures here that I just wanted to show, kind of give y'all an idea of what we're looking at. I meet the requirement as far as the 50-acre lot, 50-acre acreage, and also surpass the 500 feet to the first occupied home. It's 755 feet to there. I meet the requirements here, and I'm also going to meet the requirements as we go to burn. I feel like the burning process would take 24 to 48 hours. I'm not going to try to burn any stumps. I just know those smolder. The trees that are down, you can see in the pictures, they've been down for about 6 months, and they're going to burn up just like that. As I said last month, I'm just trying to make a living, and I'm trying to make Starkville attractive as I can. And with Starkville having the burn ban, I feel like it limits us as contractors and developers. And there are situations where I feel like it should be lifted. And I also understand why the burn ban is in place. It's a good thing, I respect that. And I know this window will close. There's a small window here. Once these homes start getting occupied, you'll see two highlighted lots there, 325 and 334. 334 is in the sheetrock stage. 325 is still unoccupied at this time. And like I say, I can operate a bulldozer. I can stay there. I'll 100% maintain what we have going as far as the burn goes. And I'm just asking I'm requesting tonight just to lift this for a special request.
Mr. Mayor and Board, of course, the citizens of Ward 3 have suffered extensively with previous burns. As a result, I had asked the board for consideration on this burn ban, which was graciously granted, given their realization of the problems that occurred with ash and smoke and all sorts of different things. This board supports development. And certainly I am willing to attempt to meet this thing halfway.
Yes.
Stuart, as I think you've been told by the fire chief, that there need to be no problems whatsoever with regard to this ban, or there will be an immediate stopping
Yes.
of this particular burn, and then we'll talk about a future ban.
Right.
And I know that you are willing to do that, having agreed to all the new requirements
Yes, sir.
that the board placed on burn bans at a recent meeting. So in this attempt at cooperation and so forth, I would move that the burn ban be lifted to allow Stuart Davis to burn on Lot 327, Greenbrier Subdivision, Phase Part 11.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Go
Thank
burn.
you. Thanks a
Just
lot.
don't burn the town down. Our next presentation is from the USD, that's Ron. Excuse me, I skipped the page on mine. I'm getting ahead of myself.
See you, sir.
Good evening.
How are you?
Doing fine. Looking at your design, as a matter of fact.
You like that?
I did. My name is Ron Cosman. I'm representing Starkville in Motion. I'm also going to be a resident of Ward 3 pretty soon, you see.
Good.
He's gonna be bothering you. I'm gonna sick him on you.
He won't be alone.
I wanted to very briefly present the Lynn Lane Education and Outreach budget that we have prepared and are presenting to the city tonight. As you may remember, 3 years ago, we were writing the Lynn Lane multi-use path proposal for MDOT. We knew that as part of that needed to be a public education and outreach component. And so we also knew that the city did not have the resources to undertake any sort of public education campaign. So we wrote into the Lynn Lane budget $20,000 per year for up to 5 years for education and outreach and community events, total of $100,000 out of that budget. Now, due to the phasing of the Lynn Lane multi-use path, it's going to start, construction will start at the university and move westward along Loxley Way. So the first group of constituents that are going to be using that particular facility are going to be MSU students. So we targeted them for our first year of communications. And we thought that who better to develop a communications campaign for students would be students. So we approached the graduate programs in health promotion and also communications and asked them if they would put together creative teams to come up with PSAs and electronic messages, brochures, pamphlets, all the normal and even new and media, electronic related media that students use as a means of getting this information out to the student body. And both of those departments have agreed to do that. They would put together teams, creative teams of students. They would come up with their creative campaign. It would be judged by a committee headed by the mayor of the city, because the grant does come to the city of Starkville from MDOT. The winning team would not only have their creative campaign produced, but they would also receive a fixed price contract as a financial incentive for participating in the competition, and also sort of making it real for them. I've already run this by the MDOT and also the Federal Highway Administration. They have both approved in concept the idea of an education outreach campaign as well as a creative competition. And in addition, we have built into the budget a temporary part-time city employee who will serve as the coordinator for this campaign and the competition. And attached to your packet are letters of approval from MDOT, actually one email communication, and then 2 letters of support from from Health Promotion and also Department of Communications.
Question from the board?
Ron, other than the mayor serving as head of the committee, it sounds like a good proposal.
I got the hammer.
Let me remind you that the money has to come to the city, so.
I certainly understand that.
You make the motion.
And so you would like for us tonight to approve the proposal?
Yes, sir.
All right, I would move that the city approve the proposal for the educational outreach plan as presented regarding the Lynn Lane multimodal path.
Second.
Any other discussion? This time we'll vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Mayor.
Now we're ready for our USDA presentation.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Board and Tammy. I am Sheila Freely, an area director with USDA Rural Development in Starkville. And I think I'm on the agenda tonight to only present information to you regarding a loan that the city has asked us for several years back. And if I may, Mayor, I have some handouts.
That'll be fine.
Thank you.
On May the 19th, 2003, the former mayor, Mayor Rutledge, came to USDA to request a loan from us for $5 million. And the purpose of that loan was for construction of a municipal criminal justice building. We worked through, and you did, worked through several different problems with the original request. The first and biggest one was you literally had to go before U.S. Congress and get an exception for us to be able to loan money to a town this size. Normally, we don't do that in populations that are over 20,000 people. The second issue you jumped through was to get the state of Mississippi to authorize you to be able to go out 30 years on your loan repayment. Normally, state regulations prohibit you from going more than 20 years, but you did get 30 years on this. So with the cooperation of the city and as well as several legal bodies, and you've got handouts on that, on the second page, this shows an obligation of funds from USDA Rural Development. Down about midway, it's actually item 28 on your second page of that handout. It shows that you got approved on 4/15/04 for a $5 million loan at an interest rate of 4 3/8, and the repayment term is for 30 years, which is a pretty good thing, we think. The problem is with our agency, and that's why I'm here tonight, is maybe try to just tell you where we sit and let you decide on what you want to do. This has been what we call obligated now for about 4 years, and the government has that $5 million there sitting on Starkville ready for you to choose to use it or not. You're not under any obligation thus far to borrow the money, but the funds are sitting there. And my dilemma is, our state office has told us we can't let this sit here much longer. There's a lot of towns in the United States that are asking for these same dollars. You have them tied up in your, in the great government world. So I just wanted to give the board some information. The mayor, I'll be glad to answer any questions on it that you might have. The problem will be, I'm afraid, is if you, and they're 4 years old, and if the city chooses not to use these monies, then we will have to what we call de-obligate the funds, and they'll go to someone else. So there's information in here as far as the private and local bill, the federal bill that actually, it's long toward the end of the package. It is the last sheet where you actually got U.S. Congress, and you're one of 5 cities in this particular thing that actually got a waiver on that population. And you can ask for that waiver 2 separate ways. You can ask for it specifically for this particular request, or you can ask for it in general based on the census, the life of that 10-year census. The city asked for it only on this one particular fiscal year for us. So if you don't take these monies and decide to go back next year, you're sitting right back again, having to go back to the U.S. Congress to ask for an extension. So I think it's a good deal, Mayor, but I'm on the other side of the desk. So
Well, a couple of things that,
Sure.
on this, that this money can be used to buy properties to put a facility on. And we have approximately, maybe another year or so in order to say, keep it from not being obligated any longer.
right.
And I believe that the current quote is 4.5%, maybe for 30 years. That's pretty good
4 and
interest
3
rate.
eighths, right.
The only negative aspect of it has to be, it has to have an equity or guarantee behind it, and we'd have to do that with a general obligation bond. Is that not
Right.
correct?
That's right. That's what our collateral would be, right. On the very front of this page, Mayor, the very first sheet, we have a breakdown as far as actual development and land and legal and so on. Ideally, you had an architect that presented these costs to us, so the city would not be out a penny up front initially to get to this point. Now, that was 4 years ago on cost estimates,
Right.
but yes, that's right.
Are there any questions that any board members would like to ask?
Just a couple, on that first sheet, it has a breakdown of how the 2004 proposal would work, and for example, land was listed as $200,000.
Right.
What type of flexibility do we have? Because that's, as we've looked at land, that appears to be an unrealistic figure.
Right, Matt, it's a good question, and you realize, I think initially, Mayor, there was some property that you could maybe buy for this particular thing, and there were environmental studies done on a piece of land that somebody said was worth $200,000. Within this overall cost of the $5 million, Matt, we're somewhat flexible there, but at the end of the day, we would like to see your project built for whatever, on whatever property, and the cost adjusted within this $5 million that you had to adjust it for.
So we can amend the budget with y'all's concurrence.
You can,
as we
that's
might
right,
need
that's
to.
right. And we've also built in, down on line 7, there is an item of $127,000 that's called contingencies. That's just a pad in there that your architect put in up front if there were cost overruns or something. So that money is certainly there to use toward whatever we see fit to use it for, Matt.
As I read through the information that was provided, it looked as if we could construct a municipal building, purchase a building, or even repair a building. Are there any limitations if we were to renovate, say, an existing structure as opposed to going out and building something brand new?
There are no limitations for what you can use the money for, but the dilemma is I'm with the government too, and I'm here to help. But if we get into renovating, and this has happened throughout the area I work in, you deal with asbestos or lead-based paint or elevator requirements or handicapped accessibility, and we have almost found it to be cost prohibitive to go into an existing building. But that's certainly not to say it can't be done, Matt.
Okay.
Of course, would vary depending on the bill.
That's right, sure.
And then it sounds like we recently had done a bond around the same amount of money, and it checked in that seems like the rates on the market for a tax-exempt bond is about 3.8, 3.9%. But the difference is those are generally for 20-year terms, and so we'd be paying more interest, but we'd get a longer payback term. Is
That's
that how
right.
you perhaps see the difference between going on the open market and going with USDA?
That's exactly right, Matt. And not only that, if you, and I've got that on the third page, I believe, down the repayment there, and I've copied parts of our file. I'll be glad to provide you with the whole documents, but there's a letter in there. Your payments at 30 years would be $302,000 a year. For 20 years, your payment would increase about $80,000. So that would be some benefit to the city, as well as on day 2, after you borrowed this money, there are no prepayment penalties within our program. So if you wanted to pay us off, certainly we would take your money right there.
And then it sounds like this, even though the market perhaps may be lower than when this was set 4 years ago, this is set from y'all's standpoint. It's not an opportunity for us
That's
to.
right, no.
Okay.
When your bond council advertises for bonds, we will show purchaser of those bonds at this interest rate.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate you being here.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your time.
This brings us up to public hearings. We have 3 tonight. The first is the repeal and replacement of the animal control ordinance. You handle that, Ms. Brule? Or is Ben handling that?
Hearing only unless you wish
Well, I mean, you know, the bottom line is we have some basic language that we discussed at the last meeting that would be changed. Basically, we would require students, listen up, I see we have a whole bunch in here. Anyone who is walking their dog would be required to pick up the droppings. Okay? Yes, sir.
Mayor, how does the city propose to enforce that change in the ordinance, since the city finds it very difficult to enforce the ordinance as it already stands, which does not include the fact that you have to pick up after your animal?
Ben, can you answer that?
It would either be through code enforcement or a police officer writing a ticket.
Or neighbor complaining and going out and say, this person let their dog poop in my yard.
So in other words, it means then that the homeowner has to be the one that is vigilant.
That would be helpful, but I mean, it would be difficult to say, have as many patrol cars out there as what he's just saying, just for the purpose to see someone violating, things. I think it's gonna be kind of a mutual cooperation of some of
Since
this.
this is an ordinance and a change in an ordinance which would probably affect a majority of homes within the city of Starkville, does the city propose a major educational program so that the public is made aware of something beyond just publishing the ordinance in the paper, because of the fact that, Mr. Mayor, the ordinance against allowing animals to roam is not enforced. And, you know, it again falls to the homeowner to either call the city or to call a code enforcement officer or such if there is an animal. And I think this is largely a result of a lack of education of the people of Starkville as to the existence of the ordinance, and not only existence, but what is in the ordinance, what makes up the body of the ordinance. Within the past 2 weeks, I have trapped and hauled several cats in my neighborhood to the city pound. And I will continue to do so. And I think this is largely because of the fact that the animal owners are not aware of
What their responsibility is,
against allowing
yes.
them to roam. And it is not only within my own neighborhood. I understand that you yourself have some property on which there are a number of free and loose roaming cats. And
Students can't ever capture them when they get ready to move out, so we end up with an
this being
abundance.
the time that students are getting ready to go home, can we publicize or something, or the city make an appeal for neutering and take your animal home with you? Don't leave it there to become a problem for other residents of the city who live here. I see
Would you
a
like to
problem
address
with
some of that?
enforcement.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your concern. I'm Diane Waller, president of Tabahal County Humane Society. The last 2 years, the electric bill, which includes the students that live in the city, received a summary of the ordinance. With this change, we would add that into our publication and publicity efforts. No, it's not perfect yet.
No.
But we are moving towards it. I think that the culture will develop, that people should pick up the waste of the animals as they're walking. And I believe that this is something that should be done. I think the city is responsible for itself, and we appreciate you bringing all these animals, these cats in, to try to address the issue.
The city or the Humane Society appreciates my bringing in animals, which now become the responsibility of the city to feed and neuter and to go ahead and medicate, because I brought sick animals in as well, which is an additional expense to either the Humane Society and to the public and the people who are supporting it. I think that even with what you say, and thank you, that there is ignorance within the city, among the people of Starkville, as to the existence of the ordinance and as to what it involves. And I think that we need somebody needs a much larger campaign. I support, the fact, the changes that are proposed, which is the fact of picking up manure from the animals. But I don't see how that's going to be enforced.
Well, I know one area of town is going to be enforced.
Who do I say we
And where is
appreciate your
that, sir?
comments?
That's
and
going to be the area where I live.
Did you hear me? We appreciate your comments, and we will be trying to address them to enhance our campaign. We have a heavy agenda on that will be included in the summary of the ordinance that goes out to people, and we will try some other techniques. If you have some suggestions, we welcome.
And Milo, your points are well taken. Of course, this type of ordinance will never, never be perfect. Those pet owners that are more responsible, for lack of a better term, already do this, do they not, Dr. Wall?
Yes.
But yes, more education needs to be done. And you say, how will it be enforced and so forth? I have received 3 calls last week about, at such and such a time, Mrs. So-and-so walks her such and such.
Right.
And
Good.
that animal always does its business exactly in front of my lot, and she doesn't pick it up and so forth. And so those individuals are going to have to report that type of thing. So code enforcement, animal control, police, whatever, can help that situation.
One dog can identify another dog by its odor, but, I'm at a loss as to who the samples belong to. Nor am I suggesting that I try to find out.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
would you just perhaps have the appropriate staff to see how these comments can be taken into consideration, how we can make.
I think they've all been listening, and
Yes, sir.
we'll address
Yes,
that
sir.
later.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Does anyone else like to make a comment on animal droppings having to be picked up in the days? We will have another public hearing in regard to this next board meeting, I believe. Is that right? You have something you want to say? Say something.
If you close the public hearing.
I did close it down.
Some people have or don't have the understanding that what an animal is. And on the definitions on A, the term animal, whenever used in this ordinance, shall be held to apply to both male and female animals, and without regard to age or size. I want to add in there examples: dog, cat, ferret, etc. Some people do not think that a cat is an animal, and I've received phone calls about this. So a cat is an animal.
Okay, very good. We'll move on. We have our second public hearing to consider proposed ordinance replacing and the ordinance number 2002-3 to establish the Development Review Committee, and also establishing conditions for the site plan review and approval within the city of Starkville. Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The item before you this evening is a second public hearing to consider the adoption of an ordinance to repeal and replace the current site plan review ordinance. What we've proposed is to provide the Development Review Committee with the authority to review and approve plans that meet the Land Development Code. If there are any plans that do not meet the code for whatever reason, they require a variance or a modification or approval or a waiver, that they would either go to the Board of Aldermen, or if it's a dimensional variance, it would go to the Board of Adjustment. So the intent is to expedite the site plan review process to encourage economic development in the city. And I forwarded copies of the ordinance, proposed ordinance, to several folks. I've received favorable comment and response. Had a couple of phone calls. Most of them were just questions on Development and Review Committee and what their makeup was, and I explained that. So most of the response that we've received, I say most, all the response that we've received has been positive. So that's really all I have to report at this time.
And this is our second, so we can vote this in tonight,
Yes,
I
sir.
believe. Anyone got any comments they'd like to say? Anyone want to make a motion?
The public hearing is still open, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I closed it real quick.
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I'd like to make one slight amendment to the proposed ordinance. If y'all flip to page 3 of 8, numeral 4, under letter B of section 3, it would be to add a sentence directly after the first sentence, which the first sentence is after reviewing a site plan and finding that the proposed plan meets the minimum requirements as set forth in the city's code of ordinance, the Development Review Committee may approve the site plan. I'd like to insert this language there. Upon approval, the members of the Development Review Committee or their designated representative shall affix their signatures to the site plan, affirming and attesting that said site plan meets the minimum requirements as set forth in the city's code of ordinance, and transmit same to the Board of Aldermen. And that will be it. I've passed a copy to our attorney so that it could be reduced to writing if we decide to vote on this evening, if y'all are agreeable to that language being inserted at that point in the ordinance. And that is just simply to just add a little extra accountability in that, if everything meets code and is up to par, then just a simple sentence.
The site plan review committee should be willing to so certify, and the information should be passed on to the Board of Aldermen that such and such has taken place.
I understand.
Yeah. Anyone in the public like to make a comment on this hearing? If not, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, sir.
The mayor has no business tonight, brings us down to board business. And the first item is for the mayor to sign a contract with the Communicode Corporation for codification of the city ordinance. Roy, you asked for that to be taken off the,
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any comments. I'm just going to vote consistent with my vote the last meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
okay.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that the mayor be authorized to sign the city's contract with the Municipal Code Corporation relative to revision of the municipal code. Ms. Sproul, why are you looking puzzled?
We had another public hearing on the agenda that was.
Yeah, we did.
Well, we can come back to that, certainly. He went
Oh,
on and
excuse
brought
me,
this up.
My glasses are not working tonight the way they should. Tammy switched pairs with me. Oh,
Why don't we go on and finish this?
let's go on, you making that motion.
I've made the motion.
Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Name that.
We'll move back to our other public hearing. This is on the repeal and replacement of the Park Commission ordinance with a proposed Park Commission ordinance to increase the membership of the commission from 5 to 7. I think under state law has allowed us in July to move that from 5 to 7 members. We have 2 wards that are not representative on this board. The floor is now open for discussion whether we should consider this or not.
All right, presently we have 5 on the Park Commission. And I see no reason to change it to 7. Because the park is operating fine, it has no problems. if you get 7, you're gonna be hard pressed to get 7 people dedicated to do this. The last 2 times this come up for an appointment, you had 1 person. Another example, when Mr. Lincoln wanted to be announced to be on the Board of Aldermen, you had 1. The worst thing you can do is load down a board with people who have no interest in what they're on there for. All wards are represented, maybe not by lines, but by people.
Who's in Ward 4 that represents you?
All 5 of us represent Ward 4. All 5 of us represent all 7 wards.
And we have the worst kept parks and things, I believe, in the city. Am I not right, Richard? With evidence?
The worst kept parks in the city.
you're wrong.
Huh? The Gillespie Center?
Mayor, I'm not going to comment to that.
All right.
All right, go ahead.
He said he's not gonna comment.
Well, one thing, now, Mr. Corey last year commented about the the Gillespie Street Center over here, and if y'all remember, the week before, y'all took $75,000 out of our budget that we never have gotten back. That was money that we were gonna use on that. But if you'll go out there and look, you'll see it's been a big improvement on that since then. Now, we've got people that's constantly needling the park commission that have no children and no interest in the park whatsoever. Now, I got a copy of the draft of this, and going by this draft, y'all will roll off everybody on this board. Not one person will be able to serve again on this board. Nobody else will be able to. You throwing away good people that has helped build this park, and Starkville has got as good a parks as you've got anywhere, but you're fixing to throw off everybody on there in order to prove a point. And it's the position of the Park Commission that we leave it like it is, and all 7 wards are represented by the 5 people on the board. Ms. Isaac, would you comment on that?
Again, Mayor, just like you just said, we had the worst kept parks. We don't have the worst kept parks. As a matter of fact, we have been told.
I beg to argue with you on Ward 4.
We've been, yeah, I could beg to argue too about a lot of stuff, but I don't. But about the parks, I will. I will. If you have any problems with the park and the Park Commission, you should contact us. Our meetings are open. Meetings are open. We're concerned about the children here in Starkville. We're concerned about getting something for them to go and enjoy. And I would just like to say, along with Dan, 5, we got 5, we're representing the city. We get calls too. And I think our clients that call us, they're quite heavy on the parks. When they call on the parks, they're always saying what good job we're doing, with the parks. So I beg you on that, and especially for our employees, please, because they're good people, and I'm asking you that. But I'm asking you also, leave the 5 alone. If it's not broke, let's not try to fix nothing that's not broke until we exactly know what the problem is.
And the design of this draft is to get rid of the Park Commission as it exists today and get rid of the people that's on the Park Commission. Nobody, not one person will be able to, Wendell Gibson rolls off this June. He will not be able to serve anymore. And Mary Love will be the only person that will be able to serve another term. Everybody else will be gone. And I think if you would look at it, drive down there and look. We'll take you around if you want to go. Because some of you have never been down there. Some of you have never been to the parks. Some of them that's stirring up all these problems have never been to the parks. Never been to an event down there. But yet, we get criticized, not in a call us up here and say what y'all would like for us to do. We get criticized in the newspaper so it'll look bad. And that's not what Starkville should be about.
The argument tonight is going from 5 to 7. It's not.
But here's your draft. If you do it, this is what you're drafting right here.
That's what you're drafting.
And it's just a public hearing.
Well, that's what you're drafting right there. It's all in the book.
This is the draft. But anyway, we'd like to go on the record as being,
in regard
like
to going
it is.
to, well, let's see if any alderman, then we'll go to the citizens. Are there any aldermen that would like to make a comment on going from 5 to 7 board members?
I do, but I will yield to the citizens first.
Okay. Any other citizens would like to make comments? We're back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. as Alderman for Ward 7, there is no representative on the Board of Commissioners from Ward 7. And to say that I will vote to increase the commissioners to 7 just to put somebody on there that has no interest, that just want to stir up trouble, that is, first of all, not fair to me, and it's certainly not fair to my constituents in Ward 7. I feel that Ward 7 has as much right to have a representative on the park, as a park commissioner, as Ward 1, 2, 3, 4, not 4, 1, 2, 3, and 5.
I can't tell you who's from what ward. I don't know what ward is the two pieces.
Well,
It may be more than one in some ward, I don't know.
well, I can say for sure that on our Board of Aldermen, we have 7. And I can tell you who represents what ward. So to say that you are on a park commission that consists of 5 people and you don't know what ward is missing, I find that kind of hard to believe, Mr. Moore.
We never have had a problem with some ward not being represented.
Okay, but I have a problem with Ward 7 not being represented. I'm not speaking for any other ward. I'm not speaking for Ward 4. I'm speaking as the Alderman for Ward 7, that I would like to have a representative on the Park Commission from Ward 7. And I think I have a right, and the constituents of Ward 7 have a right to have representation on the commission. And it's not to stir up trouble.
Any other folks would like to make a comment on this issue?
Could I make a quick comment, Mayor?
You may.
This is not about the Park Commission. I apologize, it'll only take 2 minutes. But the statement has been made in front of the public and the TV, and I think that the whole story should be made aware of them. In the past 3 years only, as reference to the Gillespie Street Center, we put on a new roof, we put in a new playplex, we replaced the sink, we replaced the countertops, we put in new ceiling tiles, we put a bench and a picnic table in by the new playplex, and we are in the process of painting the basketball court and livening it up. So as to nothing, they should know that there's been more than nothing done at Gillespie Street. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes.
Yeah, Chris Taylor from Ward 7. I'd like to invite the Park Commission to just walk through our park on West Side. And also the Board of Aldermen so they can see.
And would you be a person willing from Ward 7 to serve on this commission?
Oh, yes, sir, we need it.
Yeah.
Now, you aren't gonna do my appointment.
But I believe there would be people that would have interest in serving on commissions.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
That park used to be in Ward 6.
Oh, it did?
Yes, sir.
I see.
Mayor.
Any other discussion? Yes, Richard.
I would like to say that I have mentioned in past being in support of seeing 7 members on this commission, and that's not so much a complaint against the Gillespie Street Center, although I've had them in the past. They have made a lot of improvements to it, and you know, Clark can attest that I have gone out with him to that center a couple of times now, looked at it, and it has improved. And in seeing it improved, I've seen people using it when I drive by, and I really like to see that. I don't think that wanting to have a Ward 4 and a Ward 7 representative is necessarily an insult to y'all's job so much as it is just a desire to have someone that I know that's going to live geographically nearby that will see it every day, and so kind of keep it on their minds to be on the board.
Well, in regard to the Gillespie Street Center, 4 years ago, under the, not under Clark, but under things, that place was abandoned completely. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you that. But once we got over there and saw what kind of mess it was in, then you see a great improvement of it. But it was abandoned under the last administration down at Starkville, completely.
Right.
Any other comments? We'll bring this first of the public hearings to a close on the Park Commission. I believe that brings us down, we've, consideration authorized to sign a contract with the, that we've done, a consideration approval of adoption of the ordinance. Brings us down to whether we would approve the adoption of proposed ordinance replacing and repealing the number 2002-3 to establish the Development Review Committee and also to establish conditions for the site plan review and approval within the city of Starkville. Basically, we're eliminating carrying anything that's properly zoned and meets all the criterias to the planning commission and going straight to getting a building permit.
Actually, I thought it was just approval of the site plan, Mr. Mayor.
Well, it's basically what it works down to.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I've got the copy of Mr. Davis's text, and I just want to clarify. I probably know the answer, but I just want to make sure. Transmitting to the Board of Aldermen, can that be via a letter? Because what the intent was for site plan approval was to provide an approval letter to the applicant. And then my question is, can that be a copy of that to the Board of Aldermen?
As long as the 10 members of that Development Review Committee have signed it, affirming and attesting that it meets to all the requirements it's supposed to,
Yes.
and transmit that to the Board of Aldermen in addition to the site plan, yeah.
You want the letter, or you want a copy of the site plan with the stamp on it?
I want the site plan with
everybody's
their
signature.
signatures on it. So that we know and can look at it, because when we get a question from one of our constituents, we can actually know what it is y'all are talking to and attesting to.
I understand. Okay, that's a clarification. Thank you.
So you're gonna make a motion with your amendment to that?
If that's agreeable to the board and they don't have
I think it
objections
makes
to the
good sense,
language,
yeah.
but I'll move adoption of this, what number are we on? Ordinance number 2008.
3.
2002-3.
Ordinance number 2008-3.
I don't think it's 2008, is it? It's 2002.
Yeah, in
This ordinance is
2008.
I see that. It's repealing the number.
We're repealing ordinance 2002.
I would move approval of ordinance number 2008-3 with the amendment as presented tonight that has been reduced to writing.
Let's see what this. We have a motion.
Second.
Motion with a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Item C has been moved to Executive Committee. Airport is consent. Will bring us down to Building Codes and Planning Department. There are 3 items there.
Mayor and Board, first on the agenda is going to be Mr. property at 307 Central Avenue. It's going to be a solid waste ordinance 2007-7. In your packets that you have, you should show that made the first violation inspection on 12 of 07 door hangers and pictures. Made 4 more violation inspections from 2/13/08 through 2/27/08. All violations are documented with pictures and have been supplied. 4th offense letter never was signed, but it was returned on 3/17/08. 5th offense letter was signed for with green card returned on 3/5/08. On the correction violation, since this 5th violation has taken effect, there's been no more violations at this said property. Staff recommendations are it's fined up to $250 per offense, and designation of the subject's property for repeat violations has to be documented by the code inspector should violations continue.
Go ahead.
That's going to be it on our part.
So, be clear, we've had no further violations, and it'd be my recommendation that we retire this to file, and if we follow the procedure, then move that on code enforcement case 08-059, that the board finds that the property had 5 documented violations in the solid waste, since the solid waste ordinance has taken effect. No further violations have occurred since that 5th violation. All fines for those violations to date for 307 Central Avenue shall be retired to file. Any future violations, the code inspector would bring documentation with photographs and bring them to a public hearing for disposition, and the board may adjudicate the actual cost of collecting those fines and will add 25% of the fines and refer the case to Chancery Court for legal action and collection of penalties through the use of liens on the real property if necessary. And that's my motion, sir.
Do we have a second to his lengthy motion?
Second.
Mr. Mayor?
Do you have a comment?
Before we take any action, should we ask if there's anyone from the family here tonight?
That's what I was going to say. I've talked with Mr. Guyton. He's familiar with it. If he wants to have anything, he's familiar and understand what we're talking about.
I am, I do
Okay,
understand.
right.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Mayor and board, second thing we have for is going to be a solid waste ordinance violation of 2007-7. This is going to be located at the property of 310 and a half Central Street. As your packet showed, made our first violation inspection on 11/2/07 with door hangers and pictures and talked with the tenant. Made 4 more violation inspections from 2/13/08 through 2/29/08 with all violations documented with pictures and have been supplied. 4th offense letter was signed for on 3/3/08. 5th offense letter was signed for 3/6/08. Our recommendations be, since no further violations occurred since the last inspection, staff recommendations are a fine up to $250 per offense with designation of subject's property for repeat violation status, and to be documented by the code inspector should any violations occur in the future. And also that I've talked with Mr. Bryant. He's present with us. He's aware of where we stand at this time.
Further violations, everything's been taken care of, and so I'd move on code enforcement case 08-060 for 310.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in health care.
Last time.
No, I bet you come one more time. Oh, no, not that easy.
Mayor and board, at the previous meeting, you have accepted Pritchard Engineering's proposal to be our design consultant for the Safe Route to School project, and authorized us to negotiate a fee and come back for final approval of him. We have done that. He has agreed to the fee that was consistent with the MDOT's fee schedule, and also was actually the same amount of money that we budgeted or put in the estimate for the construction of not to exceed of some $31,000. We would recommend approval of him as our final design engineer and approval of the contract, which is a boilerplate contract from MDOT. This is the contract they require us to adhere to, subject to their approval of it. They haven't approved it yet, and we would recommend that.
Questions from the board?
Certainly an interesting contract with some provisions that you don't normally see.
Yeah, it was, and they're subject to change it, MDOT is. They did the last one we sent down, which was for the Lynn Lane project.
Any further discussion?
Ready to entertain a motion, Mr. Mayor?
I am ready to sitting here.
Already been
Huh?
done with me going to changes.
Well, I think it was, and that was a contingent on you reviewing the
Okay.
contract, I believe is what,
You just need to make that part of the motion,
you just made to make that part of the motion where he reviewed it.
because I have some things that I have, that I want changed.
Well, if it would help things, we can approve him as the design consultant, and then we can bring the contract back to you after we submit it to Rodney goes over it, and after we get approval of it from MDOT. They have to approve it before we can sign it anyway. So we would just.
See, actually, we'd already done that on a split vote.
Well, we approved Richard as being being the consultant selected by the proposal process. Then we go and negotiate a fee with and come back, which is what we're doing now. And the contract still has to go to Jackson for approval from MDOT before we're obligated to sign it. We can do that in 2 times. We can do the approval of him for a final design professional, and then once we get the contracts back, Rodney would have time to look at it, and MDOT would have approval.
I've already looked at this, and I have some changes that I'd like to talk to you about.
Okay, well, then we can hold off on the contract as long as, we just need to go ahead and approve him, Pritchard Engineering, as our design professional, so we can send the contract to Jackson.
But I thought that had already been done.
Well, you might have thought you did it, but normally what you were supposed to have done was select them from the 2 that put in proposals.
Which was done.
Which was done.
Then authorized us to negotiate the fee, which we have now done and is in this document.
Has nothing to do with designation of the design engineer anymore. It's just fee, contract.
Right. But the contract has to go to Jackson to be approved.
I don't argue that. We're talking about contract, not designation of the.
Well, that's the second step, though. But if you want to go ahead and say you did it on the first step, that's fine. We'll just send it down to Jackson and get their approval or changes.
Do you need the board to approve the fee, Bill? Is that what you're asking the board to do?
Well, we can approve the fee when we get the contract back.
Part of the contract.
It's part of the contract, if that they so want.
That you
Normally-
want to make changes to.
Yeah.
All right? So we'll
Yeah,
make
if
the
he's got
changes
changes.
and we'll
You
go
need to give
from
me
there.
your changes so we can make it before we send it to Jackson.
I got it.
Okay,
Thank you, Bill.
thank you.
Edward. Brings us down to personnel. I think that's the last thing, isn't it? Everything else is consent.
Yes, sir.
Executive session.
Good
Randy, how
evening,
are
Mayor
you?
and Board. Fine. This item is listed under personnel, and it has to do with personnel, but comes through the police department. The motion is for action to advertise for promotions in the police department. And you were handed out separately tonight a page that some way or another was omitted from your packet. The promotions under consideration are 1 captain position, 2 lieutenant positions, 3 sergeant positions. I apologize that Chief Lindley is not here. He was here, had a call on a family emergency and had to leave. It's my understanding from him that all of these positions are budgeted positions that are currently vacant. This will not result in any increase in the number of positions in the police department. Will not call for any additional hiring, but involves only promotions to fill positions that are currently vacant in the budget that was approved, is my understanding.
Do we have questions from the board?
I would move then that the personnel officer be authorized concurrently with the police department to advertise for the specified position vacant and needing promotion, 1 captain, 2 lieutenant, 3 sergeant.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll now vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, nay. I raise, whatever. Thank you. This brings us down to executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into closed session to determine the need for executive session. We can do that afterwards.
We need to make that
Consent agenda?
second.
Now let's do consent agenda.
Well, all right, let's,
Okay, fine.
Mayor and Board, I move approval of the consent agenda as previously enumerated.
we have motion second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. We'll now revisit your
Same motion.